No, I thought, yeah, you applause when it's done. You don't know yet if it will be good enough. Oh, really? Great, thanks. I appreciate the vote of confidence. So welcome to this session about Spring Boot under the hood. For those who, it's my first time in Lviv, so for those who don't know me, I'm Nicolas Frankel. I'm a software, I'm a Java developer, right? It's written here, because Ninja, Rockstar stuff doesn't exist. It's not a job title. I do also architecting stuff, and yeah, whatever. I'm a consultant, so like probably you are, and I do what the customer asks me to, whatever. Right now, I'm working for Hybris. Hybris is, yeah, great. You know Hybris? Who knows Hybris? Wow, I'm impressed. So half the room knows Hybris. So I work for them, and we have been bought by SAP, so now I'm a happy SAP employee. So for those who know, I won't tell it, but for those who don't, Hybris is an e-commerce shop based on Spring and Java. That is very extensible. So okay, back to the matter at hand. We are here to talk about Spring Boot and how good it is, but how magical it can be. And this is Phil Webb, the guy here in the corner, and is the Spring Boot lead. And basically, he described the Spring Framework as this kind of ingredients. So with Spring Framework, it's great. You've got everything to make a cake. However, the problem is I'm interested in Spring since a lot of time. I've done a lot of Spring projects, and every time, basically, I had to craft my POM, because I'm a Maven user, but you can do the same with Gradle. I have to craft my POM like I wanted, and basically, depends on the size of the project, but it took me between half a day and 2 days to really have exactly what I want, the right version of Java, the right dependency with the right version, the exclusion that I didn't want, and all this stuff. And so it's very hard to kickstart a Spring project. It takes time. It's not nice. So they created Spring Boot, and Spring Boot is a cake. Why would you give someone the ingredients? I mean, it's nice to cook. It's a pleasure if you really like it. But I'm French, but I'm not a good cooker. For me, it's super boring. I have nothing in my fridge. When I want to eat something, I don't go to the groceries and take time to cook. When it's time for me to eat, I just go to the restaurant or I order something ready to be made. And this is Spring Boot. Who already is a Spring Boot user? Oh, nearly everyone. So you know this shit. Stop. Okay. Spring Boot is also super cool because basically it gives you stuff out of the box. And one of the most interesting feature so far for me is the Actuator. The Actuator, basically, you just add this dependency and you've got endpoints that gives you monitoring insight into your application. So after adding the dependency, you add the health endpoint, and you know that, yeah, you've got so much space, and you've got the DB that is up or down, and you can monitor your application like that. Who doesn't know about the Actuator, actually? Third of the room. So for those who are interested in this kind of stuff, and it's really out of the box. So it's a bonus. Please check my talk that I have done, Spring Boot for DevOps. It's recorded, you can check it on the internet. So what about Spring Boot? Well, it works super well until it doesn't. Yeah, and at some point, you know, it's magical. Everything, it's even worse than auto wiring. It's magical, it works, it's what, and it crashes, and you don't know why. Also, I don't like when it's too magical. I like to understand how it works. And this is the stuff about this talk. So I will create a new project, and because I'm super lazy, it's already created. And I will just add this Spring Boot starter data GPA just to check how it works. So IntelliJ gives me this dependency diagram. So you can see here, Spring Boot starter data GPA is dependent on Spring Boot starter, which is depending on two different stuff. Spring Boot itself, so the classes, and the Spring Boot Autoconfigure. And so I opened the jar because I'm curious. And under the Spring Boot Autoconfigure stuff, you can see there is a meta-int. And nobody see anything, right? It's red on the, okay, so I will show it like that. You see a meta-int folder, and inside you have this file, which is super, super, super interesting, SpringFactories. Anybody know about this file so far? Good, you are in the right place. And when you open it, so it's a very, very long file, very long. And if I just check this, there is a key. So it's a simple property file, right? And the key which is of interest is a blah, 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 enable auto-configuration. And it accepts a list of auto-configuration class. And we see this one, which is relevant to GPA. OK, let's open it. This is only an annotated class. It's empty. So this is still configuration. Even though it's in Java, it's still only configuration. You can see some interesting facts. The fact is, first, it's a configuration class. Who here uses XML to configure its Spring application? Guys, 2016. So, wait. You can use Java config classes in Hybris. Let's talk afterwards. No, really, I'm interested in your experience because I tried and it works. So configuration class. Conditional annotation. Those might be new to you. Conditional on bean, conditional on class, conditional on missing bean, conditional on property. Here, you've got, like in XML, an import. So basically, you are referencing another configuration file. And here is just to order, so I won't talk about this one. And probably, the real code, the real bean stuff, is probably in this GPR repository autoconfiguration registrar class. Probably. So we will just focus on this kind of stuff. So you have a lot of conditional on bean, on class, on missing bean, on property, and there are a lot of different conditional on. So you are engineers, right? You understand conditional, and you understand that something might be a condition. As an example, who knows about the profile annotation? Half the room. So for those who don't know about the profile annotation, profile is super nice because it lets you say, like for example, you can define a set of beans that will be activated only under a selected profile when a profile is active. So you can have a dev profile and you can have a production profile, and you will activate the dev profile in development and the prod profile in production. So it's very great for that. And this was the old way to define the profile. So if you check the sources of Spring 3 dot something, I don't really know the time where they switch, you can see a normal annotation, right? This is normal standard annotation. And if you now open Spring for something, you will see this kind of stuff. Yes, there is even a big red arrow that is blinking to show you that now it has become a conditional like any other. So they first invented the profile annotation to say in this condition we will create this set of beans, in this other condition we will create another set. But now they generalized the idea and say, okay, basically a profile is just a condition, a specific condition, but there are many more conditions. And this is the class diagram. Basically, it's dump. You've got the add conditional, okay? And you've got the condition class, which is an interface. And you have many, many different ways of extending condition. You can even see that one of them, which is an abstract class, is only dedicated for Spring Boot. And this interface basically returns a Boolean. So if it matches some criteria, it will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. So again, this is very, very basic stuff. So, simply, when you call a bin annotated method that is annotated with conditional, the condition will get called. If it returns true, the bin will be created. If it returns false, it won't even be created. Super, super easy. Okay, this is time for a demo, because now my throat is dry. So I've created a very simple application, Spring Boot application, latest release, Maven compiler, stupid stuff, really dumb. Now, I will add a new bin method. Oh. Yes, sorry about that. I don't know presenter mode, but I can do that, which is better. I still like to have my line numbers and my tabs and stuff like that. So here I will just say public string, a string, and I will return hello world, oh, hello Lviv. Yeah. And just to be sure that I'm passing here, I will just say that I will dump it somewhere like system.out.println. And okay, just to be sure. So normally what should happen when I run this stuff is it should output hello Lviv, right? Yeah, this is no magic if you already know Spring Boot, right? No, it's too small. Here, better? Better? Okay, now I just told you about the conditional annotation. So I will add a conditional on class, on missing class. So I will say that if the class java.lang.string is missing, I will call this method, and if not, I won't call it. Is java.lang.string missing on the class path? No, yeah, no chance. No chance in hell. Okay? Yeah, that's why you should come early and come to the front. Okay, now I will say that if the class is present, again, string.class, is it present? Yes. What should it do? So simple stuff, really simple. So the first lesson here is your configuration classes should have no logic. Who here has configuration classes with if and else? Really? Okay. We know it together. You don't need to put your hand up. I mean, no, really. Configuration classes should have no logic. If you have to do, like, in this case, I will create this bin, and in this case, I will create this bin, now you should use this kind of stuff. Conditional. Okay? And there are lots of such stuff. So basically, you can check if a bin is present or not, if a class is present or not. You can check for an expression. That means you can have, and I would advocate against it, but you might use it. Like you can use a spell expression, a version of Java. So you can also check for a version of Java, which is great. If something exists in the JavaDay tree, if you are on an application server, if a property exists, if a resource exists, and if it's web an application or not. And if nothing suits you, you can also create your own. Of course, you can also compose them, so you can have Boolean logic. If you are at this level, probably it's really complex, but still you can do everything. And armed with that, we can do anything. And one of the things that we might like to do is to create our own starter. Like I showed you the Spring Data Starter GPA, Like it gives you something out of the box. You have a data source, you have a GPI provider that will check for Hibernate, or it's called Eclipse Link now, whatever. So let's create also our own provider. Who knows about Extreme, the serialization? Хорошо. That's super great. Normally, only old people put their hands up. So, okay. Okay. So, I created a new starter, which is basically, again, a normal Spring Boot project. And so far, it's empty. And because I'm super lazy, I will use Git to show you how I can do the usual stuff. So this is my starter. And the first stuff to do is to add the Extreme dependency. So for those who don't know about Extreme, Extreme is a simple serialization framework that can serialize either JSON or XML. So you have a bean, an object, you put it into JSON, you don't need JSON, or you to put it into XML, you don't need JSB. So simple serialization. And here, what I did, I just added the Extreme. Okay, so far so good. What I want to do, first I want to show you how it works. So, what I will do right now, I will check out the other project and add Extreme, and it should be here. Check out, and I will remove the local changes, and everything will be fine. Okay, so still nothing. What I want to do right now, I want to serialize a simple bean. So I will create a class, public class person, and I will make it static because it's much easier. And I will create a private first name of type string, and now I've written too much Kotlin. And now I will create a string with the last name. And I will, out of these two fields, I will say they are final because I want immutability, which is way better. I will add constructor parameters. I do it like that. Here, it's done. And I will create a new bean. And in that case, I will do a command line runner because just outputting is not super nice. So I will create a command line runner. Runner, just to display. I will return it. Okay, and if you want to be fancy, you can turn it into a lambda. Yeah, that's great. So here, I will create an Extreme. And basically, it's the engine. The Extreme is the engine. Better. I will Extreme, and I will create a new person. Andriy Rodionov. Don't tell him. I will serialize Andriy. And I will just say to XML, person, and I will then afterwards dump it somewhere. Person, I have to assign it to a variable. That would be cool. S is good enough for me. Now, run it. Okay, this is Extreme. By default, I take the engine, I pass it in instance, I say serialize it. Great? Okay. So far, this is completely useless because my starter does nothing. My starter does nothing. It doesn't help me in any way. If you know Extreme, and if you don't know, let me tell you, this Extreme instance here, it has no state. It should have been static methods, but because they were thought work, they thought static methods were bad. So you have to instantiate every time that you want to use this stream. You have to instantiate a new instance, which gives you nothing, and then you call the stuff. So for our starter, I would like this instance to be provided out of the box by my starter. Make sense? Let's do that. So this is the extreme AutoConfiguration class. And as I told you, first I have to create the SpringFactories file. So this is meta-inf SpringFactories, the super file. And here is the key that we talked about, enable AutoConfiguration. And I will just pass it the path to my new configuration class. And itself, the configuration class is stupid enough, right? If there is no extreme instance, I create a new extreme instance. So far, so good. How can we use it? Let's go there. And here, okay, I will make you happy. I will use a lambda. That's hype. Okay, now I say, if there is no extreme instance, I will create one. So I know there is one somewhere. So I will say I will inject it there. And I won't use this one. I will use the one that is in the context. But this, in my application, there is no in the context. There is none. So let's check how it works. It works. Oh, it's magical. So what happened? Basically, because I'm using this kind of stuff, because this is a dependency of my application, this class contributes to the overall context. Still not clear? Okay, I can show you the SpringFactory file that I showed you before. So let's go there. There is Autoconfigure here, meta-inf, SpringFactories. Big file, enable auto-configuration of many different stuff. And here, this is the one we talked about, the GPA one before. So basically, I'm just using the same mechanism to do my own starter. The entry point is a SpringFactories with key enable auto-configuration. And if it finds relevant values that are on the class path, it will bring them into the context. That's a good question. Actually, this is a really good question. If not, what happens? Because basically, did I add the rabbit AMPQ dependency? Did I? Did I? No. Did it break? No, you don't care. I mean, that's why they factor into one classes of auto-configuring stuff and the rest. I don't know why they did that, but it works. So if it doesn't find it, it's not a problem. But for your own, basically, you will have the configuration file plus the configuration class into the same jar. It's no use creating two jars, or if there is, I still don't understand why. Anyway, so it doesn't work. Sorry, it does work. It takes my stuff out of the context. Now, what happens if I provide my own extreme? So now, I will have my own extreme instance. So since there is a conditional, if the bin is missing, and the bin won't be missing, I'm expecting to use my own. I'm expecting to override the default. And how can we be sure of that? we will return a new extreme instance. And with that, we will provide a new, and that I have to, now I don't want to have XML, I want to have JSON. So this is easy. If I did rightly, if I overrode the stuff, you will see JSON. If not, that means it's the default one, you will see XML. It works. It works pretty well. So this is real good overriding. You have default, you can override default. This is how Spring Boot works. Now, yes? What? Что? Yeah. This is because, okay, I will answer. This is not Spring Boot. This is because Extreme first was designed as an XML serialization. And when they wanted to add JSON serialization, they didn't want to break the compatibility. So it's still called to XML, but it should be called serialize. That's a good question. But this had nothing to do with Spring Boot. Okay. So now it's good, but let's say now I want to create a converter because the default configuration, I don't like it. I don't like the default configuration, so I will create a converter, and I don't want to split out the first name and the last name. I want to split the name completely. So I will create a converter, implements converter. I hope it's the right one. Yes, so it will convert if type equals person.class. The unmarshal, we don't care. This one is important. So, like I said, it's because it's also an old library. You don't have generics, so I have to cast it there. That's the only reason. I don't think it's maintained anymore. But if you want something quick, it works super well. And I will just write dot set value first, no, not first name, like that, first name like that, plus last name, person.last name. So this is a converter. And basically, I want to use this converter, whether it's my own Extreme instance or the one provided by default, because again, the Extreme instance is not important to us. I want to use this converter. So what I can do is I can do extreme.register converter here, and I will create a new person converter here, like that. And yeah, here I aggregated both. Yeah, but wait, because I see many heads going up. Yeah, I cannot go more. Sorry. Next time you know, to my talks, you come early. Okay, unfortunately, here, I didn't do anything interesting. What I would like to do is I create a bean person converter, and it gets registered automatically, whether in my instance or in any instance. How can we do that? Again, I won't code it because it's already there. Oops. Check out. The only thing that I have to do, what did I do? Is to use this one to increase, not that, no. The level of the library that I'm using, and sorry, here. So what I want to do is I want to create a new bean there. And I want it to be of type converter, and here in that case it's a person converter, is just as the sake of an example, and here I will return a new person converter there. So I want this stuff to be automatically used by anything. So if I provide one, I want it to be registered automatically. So it still works. So you see that the starter and the application share the same context. How it's done? Just like that. Just like that. It's a bean of type collection converter. It takes an extreme instance. It takes the list of converters, and it returns them. But for each of them, it registers them before in the extreme instance. Now let's say that we want, because we are using the default one, so it's super easy, but we want to provide our own extreme instance that converts, that serializes to JSON. Will it work or not? So I'm expecting here to be JSON, but still being serialized with the conversion with first name and last name aggregated. And here it works. How cool is that? No, not very cool. Who says it's cool? 3 people. Who say it's not cool? Who wants to go to lunch? Okay. I think we got 10 minutes left, so what I propose to do is to break it there. Here you can follow my blog, you can follow me on Twitter, you can be my friend on LinkedIn. Here is the source of the stuff. So if you want to go a little further, I will tweet it, don't worry, don't worry. I see everyone taking pictures. Blin. Blin is acceptable, right? Yeah. It's not the other word. Sorry, I don't know Ukrainian yet, but I will work on it, so to be able to swear in Ukrainian. Just give me time. I will tweet it, don't worry. So if you have questions at this point, I will be, yes?
So it looks like with all this auto configuration stuff, it is possible that you can pull some library which will pull some transitive dependency with, say, not RabbitMQ, but something else, and something may get auto-configured implicitly, and you won't know about this. Am I right?
It's like saying, yeah, if you use Maven, you will get implicit dependency, and they may get into conflict.
Conflict, or it will enable some feature in the Spring, some auto-configuration, and you won't know it.
You will know it if you manage your dependencies.
Well,
like in Maven.
Well, my question was, is it possible at Spring Boot application startup to validate or assert somehow condition classes that were passed, I mean, that were, enabled, and make some kind of check?
I'm not really sure I understand your question, but every jar that is in the class path will be checked for a SpringFactories class. If it's a SpringFactories under meta-inf, if there is such a file, then they will be read and they will be like activated. So you have to check what you pull in. Basically, we can check that in my first example, and this one, I added let's add a new dependency, just to be quick. Dependency and Spring Boot Starter Actuator. no version, it will take the default one. Normally, it should refresh the list. If it doesn't, it's too bad. Re-import. Doesn't seem to work, or does it? No, sorry, perhaps I'm missing internet connection, I cannot tell you, but normally every starter should only bring, shouldn't bring additional starter. So they should be pretty isolated from one another. If that's the case, that it's your responsibility, like if you use log4j, for example, it will get mail and servlet jars. So it's also to you to check what you will get in the end. It's your responsibility to manage your dependencies.
But if you are not pulling if you are pulling the exact starters you want, you will probably not have this problem, right? Because
no, I deeply think, but that could be checked for real, that the Spring team, those provide all those starters that are in the org Spring Framework boot domain are nicely done. Now, it's not impossible for someone to create its own starter that pulls other starters as transitive dependencies. It's not impossible, but would you like to use such a library or not? It's up to you. Other questions? Yeah? Perhaps you can wait for the mic. The mic for the guy? No, not you. No, okay.
This auto configurations that we have in SpringFactory is it always initializing in the end of Spring context.
Now, if you want to have if you are dependent on something else, then you can do like I showed you in the in one of the slides. You have this kind of wait. This one. You can have AutoConfigure after. Like you are dependent on another configuration class. You will say AutoConfigure after or AutoConfigure before. And this is the kind of ordering you can have. Otherwise, most of the time, order is not important.
But how it checks the conditions? I mean, if we have some beans in our context that we write in Java configuration, and in our auto configurations we have some conditions that depends on.
But I showed you how it worked. I mean, if you provide in the context, there is one single context in the end. Okay, so like I did, for example, when I provided the extreme bean in my AutoConfigure jar, in my auto configuration, I didn't know if that was before or after. Both contributed to the context, and they were resolved in the end after they were both there.
Okay, so
you see my point?
Yes, there is no matter. There's no matter about order of initializing of beans.
Most of the time, there is no order issue. If you really want to make something work before or after, you use this kind of annotation. But I mean, for 99.99% of the cases, it's no use.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Yes?
So you talked about the Actuator.
Yes.
Bean, and it adds the /health URL to
yes.
your project, and it shows all the data. So
not all, some.
Some of the data. So should it be considered as a substitute for standard DevOps monitoring systems like Zabbix or so on? Or if it's not, what are some hacks to use them both to get them?
So this is outside the scope of this talk. We agree.
Yes,
okay. I'm not a DevOps guy, really. What I know is that really most of the time I miss the actuator when you're using Hybris, for example, because it's not based on Spring Boot, it's based on standard Spring. And that would help me tremendously. So if you already have something in place, it's up to you to see which features you use and to see if the actuator has the same feature. Then you can replace your stack. If you are missing something in the actuator, of course, don't replace it.
It's not. But I was talking about if you have an external monitoring system and it already monitors the things that the actuator does. So should you
Most of the
consider that
time, there is a rule in computer, in IT software, if something works,
don't fix it?
don't touch it. I mean, if you have no added value, what would be the point?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? Yes.
Actually, could you please say honestly, have you got a chance?
I'm not honest, I'm French.
Okay. So use all this stuff in some kind of real production project with, I don't know, thousands of beans?
No.
Because for me,
No, I'm honest, no.
almost of this stuff is look like, you know, real magic, and it could be really convenient in some small project. But for example, imagine if you create like this stuff, you know, some extreme object for local usage, and realize that you have some kind of 100 registered converters, which you don't want at all. So I mean that for big project it could be, you know, little bit overhead and tricky to, you know, have such.
Okay,
such
I will
magic.
answer your question directly, and then I will answer the rationale behind your question. First is the converters. It's not default. It's the one that I added. It's who added it. It's me. It was not in the default starter. So it's up to you when you design your starter to see this is for everyone or this is like business specific. A converter is probably business specific. The extreme instance is not business specific. Everybody uses it. So that's the point. My second point, the rationale behind your question, I always got this kind of, don't take it personally. Of course, it's meant to just be a little provocative. It's when I do the talk on the actuator, some people say, hey, but how much overhead does it has? We are afraid. We don't want to do it. Yeah, so you prefer not to know anything, but to go fast in the wall, than just to know what you are doing. And here it's exactly the same. Why don't you try? Better not touch anything, right? Because if it works, don't fix it. Here, what I showed you is how Spring Boot works, how you can use Spring Boot internals to design your own starter. Because sometimes, I mean, the point is here, in this case, the example is super stupid, but why do you need every time to create a new extreme by hand? But the point, you do that in every project. So what I'm telling you is probably in your organization, you are using the same stuff everywhere. Everywhere. It cannot be otherwise. I'm just saying if you're already using Spring Boot, perhaps you can create a starter once, and then you can spread it all over your company, and then it really helps you get faster into the development of your business-specific cases. That's my point.
Yeah, okay, thank you. But actually, at the beginning you said that, you know, you create these beans all for your own, and in such situation it's not really possible to have big damages. But at the end you said that you can reuse you know, the same code in the several projects, and
it's not the same code directly. That's my point. How I create the extreme instance, it's insulated. What the important port, again, it's a very simple example to make you understand. But let's say that how I create an extreme instance is super hard, is super complicated, and you have every time like 10 lines or 20 classes to create it. You do it once in your starter, and you give the starter, and then it's done. The only important stuff is how you get the bean, and the bean is there in the context by default. Yeah. And afterwards, if you are not interested in that, you can create properties to tweak how you create the instance, like I showed you, conditional on property and stuff like that.
Okay, my main question is how easy to build a scalable application using the Spring Boot? Will this support? Or
What do you mean by scalable? How many users do you have? What is your problem? It's too general a question. I cannot answer that,
the
honestly.
problem is, for example, I would like to design e-commerce, I don't know.
I won't help you. You will be a
Platform.
competitor.
Yeah, for sure. But
I won't help you then. I'm not killing my business.
but your business is for e-commerce, but not marketplace, and marketplace is not yet supported by Hybris right away.
Not yet.
Not yet, right? Correct. And which is the point? Does Spring Boot have any tools to implement highly scalable applications?
Again, this has nothing to do with Spring Boot, with Spring whatever. Your question is too general. How is it related to Spring Boot proper? I mean, what you can say is, how am I creating reactive application, web application? That might be the case.
Okay, it just runs one application on one single node. But how about the communication between different nodes? And
Yeah, but it's again, it's how is it related to Spring Boot?
okay,
Yeah, it has nothing to do with that. Sorry. Other questions? No, it's no other questions. Sorry, guys. Thank you.